Welcome back. You are watching Shadowboxing, and I will continue my discussion with John Hyde. John, everyone knows that your involvement is very strong in culture and arts. And now you are Shadow Minister of Culture and Arts, and your other side, the real minister, is John Day. You've been involved before lots of planning of cultural policies. What's the difference between your previous dreams or your dreams today and the harsh reality what John Day and the government represent today?
Well, I was very proud to write the Gallop government's arts policy in the year 2000, and I think those 8 years we certainly had more money for the arts, but I think we also had a lot more in terms of outcomes and a lot more in terms of local employment. I think the difference between 2000 and what we've seen over the last 4.5 years is that we've lost local arts jobs. And I think just as we've seen in the manufacturing industry and elsewhere, I think the state government's got a real responsibility to focus on delivering local jobs for local creative people. I still believe the arts are a great incubator for the health of a society, but also for its economic well-being and its social well-being.
So we got this great two-speed economy, as we call it now, in WA, and we are the richest state in Australia anyway, and we're still losing artists because we couldn't support them. How does it work?
We've got the main issue of the WA Academy of Performing Arts, which is one of the world's great training institutions for actors and for others involved in the performing arts, and we're quibbling over $2 million that it needs to continue at the very high levels that it does. At the same time, we've got some real pockets of excellence in Perth that we should be nurturing.
Such as?
Animation in gaming. The issue of gaming is a real growth area, and I think in terms of those creative pursuits, we need to be making sure that the money that we're putting into the arts is going there. I mean, I was tearing my hair out when the Barnett government thought their great arts contribution was getting the Top Gear TV show to Burswood. Now
that's a laughable matter. I mean,
well, it was. The Minister for Tourism, he honestly thought that they'd be televising from Perth, and so kangaroos and Kings Park and people doing burnouts and the wildflowers would be seen all over. But it was a tiny stage show for the Top Gear people that they take on the road all around the world, and we did not have extra jumbo jets coming down from Singapore and Malaysia to bring tourists to Perth.
And I believe it's cost us money as well.
It cost us a huge amount of money. So I'm very critical that the scarce amount of money that is there for the arts and for cultural arts funding through tourism and also through Lottery West isn't being targeted directly to job creation and helping local WA enterprises in the arts.
Yeah, I was shocked to hear just recently that we got, the state is that, and the Art Gallery of Western Australia got an agreement with the Modern Art of New York to bring here 6 exhibitions from New York, and the first one was already here, and that was Picasso to Warhol. And they're spending $27 million in 3 years to pay to the American Modern Art Museum to bring here American art. Do we need that, or can we do something better with $27 million?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really important conversation, and I think we do have money available through the Perth International Arts Festival and elsewhere that enables artistic work that's not easily acceptable to West Australians to come here.
Not acceptable, accessible.
Accessible, yes. But I think what I'm really worried about is turning our art galleries or our theatres into venues rather than living local galleries and theatres. You've got to be creating your own art. You've got to be fostering your own art.
Heritage. Heritage is one of your other portfolio, And I think heritage is very important like history, as I said before. And you always marched for heritage and you always stand up for heritage. Could you tell us some examples of your best projects and achievements in heritage?
Okay, well, I'm being invited to a reopening at Dilhorn, which is the heritage house on the corner of Lord Street and Bulworth Street, one of our finest examples. Now, when I was on council, that was under threat, and we were able to work.
Council of what? Back in Perth?
Vincent.
Vincent. Okay,
back when Vincent was a town, very early on. It had been an army property, an army museum, very badly run down. It was being sold off to the private sector, and we were able to negotiate agreements. And I think what I'm proudest about, certainly my approach to heritage, is that by working with private owners, you can actually get a better outcome with heritage, and it's through incentives. Yes, we do need strong laws, and we push through legislation to raise the fine to $1 million when people are deliberately damaging state heritage property, whereas before it was a $50,000 fine. So many developers,
you choose that, yes,
yeah,
to do.
you choose a tiny little $50,000 fine, which enabled you to knock over a heritage building which perhaps was set back a bit too far if you're wanting to put up a boring tilt-up concrete monstrosity in its place. I've got a strong criticism of the Barnett government. They came in, we'd just had the fire at the Guildford Hotel. 4.5 years later, it's still decaying, it still isn't roofed. The government has been very, very weak in using the powers that it does have to bring about a good heritage and economic outcome for the owners, and most importantly for the local community.
Is that the question of policy or money or both?
No, well, it's both. And you've got to be able to use policy. I think most people who love heritage or who choose heritage know that you don't own heritage, you're just merely a caretaker. I think Indigenous communities got a strong understanding that we're caretakers of the environment and caretakers of the assets of a local community. And
I believe that as well. On that note, what's your opinion on the recent development of the foreshore? That was a heritage listed land. And so you're happy to see the heritage going away? As a person standing up for heritage? I know the plan originally was made by the Labour Party and the government now, the Liberals, or Colin Barnett, they made it worse, a little bit worse than the Labour Party.
A lot worse.
A lot worse, maybe, a little bit worse than the Labour Party planned it. What's going on in your electorate?
Yeah.
And why?
Look, I believe the waterfront project by the Barnett government is a disaster. It's $500 million. We're sure there's a lot more that will be needed to be spent there before it actually comes to fruition. And the hypocrisy that they refuse to change the heritage listing of the Esplanade. So even though they call it Elizabeth Quay, it is still legally the Esplanade.
Oh.
Because it is state heritage, it requires an act of Parliament to remove that listing. So they want to keep going with the myth that the Esplanade is just being readapted, even though it is being totally destroyed. The decision recently to relocate the Florence Hummerston heritage listed kiosk virtually 150 metres away is just, it is something out of Monty Python, that you could not have changed the design to leave in situ a very piece of heritage. Now, originally they said, we'll take it down brick by brick, we'll move it to Supreme Court Gardens or Cottesloe or somewhere else. Then they've realised there's nowhere else, and so to kind of appease some heritage people, they're saying they'll build it 150 metres away in the middle of an island. It's like Alcatraz.
It sounds funny, and probably the Barnett government like entertainment, so that's why they're doing it, entertaining the people. Well, on the wrong way and very expensively.
Well, again, my great concern is that this is a project that's to get the chattering classes chattering and to take people's minds away from the lack of a real project. Nowhere else in the world have you had a major waterfront project that's been developed on prime heritage site. It's always been on a denuded industrial land.
So how can the government do that without, you know, even apologizing from the people for it? So what's the justification of taking over a heritage land? And
I don't think there is any justification, and most people in WA don't realise Riverside Drive's going to be cut. People don't realise exactly what this project is doing.
The Riverside Drive cut, how does it going to benefit you in Perth?
It's not, and people in my electorate, the people in that inner city precinct, they know that losing Riverside Drive, having 8 extra sets of traffic lights, what that's going to mean to apartment dwellers in Murray Street, Hay Street, yes, and cutting it down by a half at a time when we've got 2,000 people every week moving to WA. It is madness.
So you think this madness can be stopped somehow? Or that will be the final thing anyway?
Well, groups like the gatekeepers, other people that have been involved are trying to galvanise public support for this, and the people that look at the issue know that it could be done better. We can still have a waterfront project, not on this scale and not with the horrendous results of cutting Riverside Drive and losing all the open space that the magnificent esplanade gives us.
So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out what to do?
I don't think so.
And it's not done. Interesting. Thank you very much for being on Shadowboxing, and it was nice talking to you.
Thanks, Tibor. Great to be on Shadowboxing.
Thank you for you to watch Shadowboxing, and see you next week, same time, same channel.